Hi, it's Candy from On a Sewing Studio again. We are going to do Life is Short, Eat the Cake tea towel today from the Fill in the Blank of the Month Club. So what you will get in your Fill in the Blank is a set of tea towels, a green one, and you will also get a pink one. That looks like this. So these come together in a set. So you can pick these up in one of our shops, and then when you purchase them, we will give you a free design on, you'll have to bring in a USB or we'll email it to you, the free design to do these either on your embroidery machine or for sewing. These were done on an embroidery machine, and that's what we're showing today. So that's what we're going to be working on today. And it will look like this when it's all done. Alright, so the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to do a little bit of prep work. So one of the things that you need to prep is to put your stabilizer in. Today we're using an adhesive sew and wash. So you'll put that in your hoop. And then what you are going to do is you are going to take a scissors or a pin, and you just want to score all the way around your hoop. And then I usually take and put an X through the middle, so that I can peel it back. So you're going to peel back all your stabilizer, and you will notice that the stabilizer that is, once you peel the paper away, the stabilizer that is left is very tacky, sticky, and that is how you will position your towel. So go ahead and do that. We're going to take a break for just a minute while you take care of getting your stabilizer off of your paper off of your stabilizer so that you have the sticky left. All right, once you have taken your glossy paper off of your adhesive sew and wash, you can go ahead and put it in the hoop. And then what you are going to do, you will notice with this there are two different files. One is a centering file, which is going to help you place your towel in your hoop, and the other one is the actual design. So for this project, I used a 5x7 hoop, but the first one that I want to use is the centering line. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to set them. And then what it's going to do is it's going to stitch out crosshairs directly on your adhesive stabilizer. So if you just want to watch this for a minute, go ahead and load that, and then go ahead and stitch out the crosshairs. The next thing that you're going to want to do is go ahead, and it's finished embroidering that file. So now what we are going to do, we are going to go back and we are going to pull up the actual design from our USB. All right, so there are the two files again, and again I'm using a 5x7 hoop. I'm going to go up and pull up the actual design, and I'm going to get it ready to embroider. Now the next thing that you have to do, and you can get this prepped like I did beforehand, but what you're going to do is take your tea towel and fold it in half, right sides together, okay, and then once you have it folded in half, you are going to fold it one more time, and you're going to move it down about 5 inches, and you're going to put a pin there, And that is going to go on your crosshairs on in your hoop. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to take this corner, so you fold it in half, right sides together the long way, and then you folded the edge up about 5 inches and placed a pin in there. So then what I do is I take with this sticky adhesive backing, and I just place it along my crosshairs like that. I pull out my pin, and I'm going to then fold that down, and I've lined everything up with the crosshairs that I stitched on the stabilizer. And then I'm going to flip it back open, completely open, and I am just going to press this down nicely like this. Oh, Gail, start that one over. Okay, so I have my fabric already prepared for this. I did it all in advance. So I have one piece of Kimberbell white leather. Then I have a little piece of red leather, and all of these, what size to cut them and everything will come on your USB in the instructions. So it will tell you what size you need. Then for the cake, I did 4 layers. So I have 4 different layers for my cake. And what I wanted you to take note of that I prepped beforehand once I cut the fabric, on the back of the fabric, I ironed on a piece of non-woven. Okay, so it's right, I ironed it directly onto the back of each of these pieces of fabric right here. It just gives the fabric a little bit more structure and makes it a little heavier so that the background from the towel doesn't show through the fabric, and also it prevents some of the puckering that you sometimes get with a dense project. Okay, so now what we are going to do, our next step here, is we are going to put some thread in, and I'm going to choose white because the first piece that I'm doing is the plate, which is made out of the white leather. And the white leather and for the plate, and the red leather for the cherry on top is a raw edge applique, so it won't satin stitch around it. It will only stitch around the edge, which is why I wanted my thread to match my leather. So the first thing that's going to happen is I'm going to put my foot down, and I am going to hit the go button, and what it's going to do is stitch the outline that tells me where to place the leather for the plate. You can just keep going. All right, so there is our placement line, and then what you want to do is place the white leather on top of it, making sure that you cover the entire placement line. Then you're going to start the machine, and it is going to do a tack down stitch that holds the white leather in place. your next step is going to be to trim that white leather away, and you can leave about 1/8 of an inch around. As I said, there is no more stitching, there's no satin stitch around this plate, so it is a raw edge applique. So you'll just want to go ahead and stitch around the outline. And if you have a little extra, that's okay. I left about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. All right, and there you go. And if you have a little couple of rough edges, you can just, you know, smooth those out a little bit. All right. What we're going to do next is we're going to do our first layer of our cake, and I used a tan brown colored piece of fabric. So the first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and stitch that down as soon as I rethread my machine here. All right, so it's going to stitch down a placement line that is going to tell us where to put this piece of fabric. So I'm going to lay that piece of fabric right there, and I'm going to go ahead, and you're going to see the placement line for this fabric. It'll be on the plate. And again, once that's done, we're going to place this piece of fabric on top of it and make sure that we're covering the entire placement line. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, making sure that I cover up that placement line. And now we're going to tack it down. You see that it stitches around twice? That's because we're going to trim it. All right, so I am going to take it out, and then I am going to stitch or cut as close to that stitched line as I can without cutting the stitches.
Whatever you want to use it for. So yeah, and take your feet, because your feet will work on your new machine. No. And this actually will work with your new machine, so if you want an extra power cord, take that. Then take your thread and take your spool cap.
All right, if there are a couple areas where you don't think you got close enough, you can go ahead and just trim those off a little bit.
So if you want to just pull it over there and pull it up.
And then put this back in, and now it is going to do a decorative stitch around part of the cake. So I'm going to change colors of thread and let it, I want it to look like chocolate, so I'm going to be using brown thread. And so it's going to stitch around this part right here using a decorative stitch. The decorative stitch is a little bit different than your normal satin stitch. This one happens to be, it wants it to make it look like the cake has been cut and you have rough edges. So that's what it's doing right now. They're kind of like little flowers all chained together. So it is different than your normal satin stitch. All right, now we are going to do the placement line for the second layer of our cake. So it is going to go ahead and stitch that placement line so that I know where to put my next piece of fabric. Okay, and now we're going to do our tack down line for our second piece of fabric, and just again making sure that I cover that placement line entirely. So there we go, and then we're gonna, when it's done stitching around the tack down line, we're gonna trim again. Okay, and again, I'm going to trim as close to that stitch line as I can without cutting the stitches.
No, I'm ordering it. She's putting some money down today, and then she'll be in this weekend and take the rest. Okay, all right. So.
All right, and again I'm going to change colors because my next piece is going to be a pink piece of fabric, so I will want to have that color in my machine for doing this next part. All right, I'm going to put my hoop back in, lock it down, and now we are going to do just the edge here again in a decorative stitch. All right, and now we are going to do our placement line for our third layer of our cake.
Yeah, I can just put it right there and then write down on it, and then we will mount
And again, placing that third layer of fabric onto our machine, and we are going to now tack it down. All right, we are going to trim our fabric now again, and we're going to take a little bit of a break and let you go ahead and trim your fabric, and we'll be back with you in just a second. All right, so the next step that you're going to stitch out is just the decorative stitch that goes on this edge right here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start our machine and do that short decorative stitch. All right, after that short decorative stitch is finished, then you are going to do the placement line for our the final layer of our cake. So we're going to do that now. Okay, we're going to place our final layer of our cake, And we're going to make sure that we cover up all the placement lines, and then we're going to go ahead and stitch it down. And this is our tack down line. So it will hold our fabric in place, and then we'll trim it. All right, and again, we're going to pull it out of the hoop a little bit. I like to have a little bit of a surface underneath where I'm cutting, so I make sure I don't push my stabilizer in my project through my hoop. So I usually try to have it somewhere stable, be it the machine or on a table off to the side, so that we don't push that through. Been there, done that. It's not fun to get it all lined back up again, so I try not to do that. All right, again, trimming as close as I can to that stitch line without cutting it. And if you don't get it all, you can go back and touch it up. This one looks pretty good. All right, so the next step is we are going to change color just for that little decorative stitch on the side. So I am going to do a white for that. All right, thread my needle, push my hoop back in, and we'll start our machine just for that short decorative stitch. Alright, so the next thing that we'll be stitching out is a design onto our leather plate. So we're going to go ahead and change colors again to stitch out a design on the plate. It's just a little string of flowers that go on the edge of the plate. So you can pick whatever color you want your plates to be. On the first one that I did a light blue, and now I'm doing a mint green. But you can do it with pink or red or navy blue, whatever color you want the design on your plate to be. What we're going to do now is we are going to stitch out the fork. I did mine in a gray, but you can do it in whatever color that you want. On one of the ones that I did it in kind of a silver. So we are going to go ahead and we put a gray thread in, and we are going to go ahead and stitch out our fork, and we'll be back in just a minute once that's done stitching out. You can go ahead and stitch out your fork, and we'll be back with you in just a minute. All right, the next part that we're going to stitch out is the shadowing on the fork. So I picked up a different shade to do that, and it's just going to be for a little bit, but we're going to take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll do the frosting and the rest of it. All right, The next part that we're going to stitch out on our embroidery machine is all of the frosting. So I picked pink frosting, and that's the color of thread that I have loaded into my machine. So we are going to go ahead, and this is a longer stitch up because it does in between all the layers, and then it does the top of the cake and then the decorations on the cake. So we're going to go ahead and start, and you can also, we're going to pause the video after we get started with our pink thread, and then you can go ahead and go do your layers also. All right, so the next step is going to do the placement line for the red leather, which is your cherry on top. So I'm going to go ahead and do my placement line. Alright, and then I'm going to place my red leather on top of my placement line, making sure that I cover the entire placement line. And I'm going to go ahead and stitch down my red leather. And then I just need to trim the red leather around. So we're going to take a little bit of a break while I go ahead and trim around that little red circle. And then we will move on to the next step. The next part that we are going to stitch out is the leaf and the stem. So you'll do the stem first and you'll do the leaf. And you do have a color change in there between the stem and the leaf. So we're going to go ahead and stitch ours out and take a break while you do yours. All right, we are on our last thread change, and so whatever color you would like to use for your Life is Short, Eat the Cake lettering, I chose a blue. You can use a black, whatever color that you want that's going to show up. So I've loaded that thread color onto my machine. I'm going to push the button, and we're going to stitch out the lettering.
Okay, we're going to pause now, and we'll be back as soon as it's finished.
All right, now that you have finished up your lettering, what you're going to do is take your project out, and you are going to unhoop it, and take your project out of your hoop. And then what you're going to want to do, so here it is out of the hoop, what you're going to want to do is flip it over, and you are going to want to trim your stabilizer all the way around. I usually say about 1/8 of an inch around your project. So you're just going to take and cut all the way around here without cutting your towel. And this will all wash away after the first time you wash your towel. So you don't need to be perfect. Just cut about 1/8 of an inch around the design all the way around, and you're going to remove your excess stabilizer. And just don't cut a hole in your towel. And our last cut. Then, as you can see, here is your towel all finished. But these two, if you look at them, the green one has a fringe on it. This is the last step of your project, and it is a sewing step. So you will need to take this to your sewing machine, and you will need to stitch whatever edging you want, or you may leave it blank if you don't want the fringe on there. You could do pom-poms, you could do a crocheted lace, whatever you want on here, or you could just leave it blank. But you just line it up, pin it down, and then stitch it around. And if you can look at this one, it is all stitched, and I basically used this line right here as my stitching line, so I didn't have to do any measuring. So I stitched it down, like that, and then it's ready to go. You're all done. And again, this stabilizer on the back will wash away the first time you wash the tea towel. So that's it for today. See you next time.